So, Jazakallah. Monzer Kahf. And Abdulazeem Abozaid. It seems that it's a little delayed for the given time schedule, so I don't want to get any further ado to give a chance to speak in order, especially with this great speakers lined up here. So we can, of course, discuss later on any questions. Hopefully, we have a Q&A session as well. So considering that, and also this delay, unfortunately, for the gathering this salon for crowd. So I would like to give you at least 15 minutes each. Then Q&A section, if you would like to. Is that fine? So if you agree, it's up to you. It's whatever you would like to. So just again, without further ado, I would like to give you this chance to. You would like to speak here? Okay. Sırayla Türkçe şimdi arkadaşlarımıza 15 dakikalık şey vereceğiz, konuşma, sunum. Ardından isteyen en sonunda da soru cevaba dönebiliriz. O yüzden floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's a true pleasure to be here. I would like to thank the organizers of the Istanbul Forum for inviting me, and especially to Dr. Ahmet Koroglu for this kind invitation. It's a true honor to be here today. I have been solicited to present on the topic, what are the immutable principles of Islamic economics? And just a brief disclaimer before I start that I'm not an economist. I am trained in Islamic and Middle Eastern studies, so the questions and the approaches that I have will obviously differ from those from an economist or a political scientist, for instance. Since I have only 15 or 20 minutes, I will delve right into the topic. Next slide, please. Just a quick rundown of the presentation. I will say a few words on the economic science before continuing with the notion of economic cosmology in Islamic tradition, and what can we learn from it, as well as I want to spend a few minutes discussing the notion of decolonization, which I think is very important for us. So my starting point is that mainstream depictions of economic science and the development of capitalism by and large, historically distorted. They ignore power relation and are based upon a particular philosophical understanding of the division of sciences, which was developed in early modern Europe. Not only then has economics been dominated by white men in the global north, but also the discipline has paid little attention to economic history and the history of economic thought in non-Western contexts and societies. Next slide, please. Economic scholarship has been, in other words, overwhelmingly Eurocentric. Yet mainstream economists continue to assert claims about the universality and neutrality of economic science. Given then the bias in economic history and the importance of economics in today's global markets, I'm interested in economic teachings in Islamic tradition. And I would like to share a few perspectives on the subject with you this morning. By reading several classical and modern scholars, the concept of quote-unquote economics seems not only interdependent with ethical reasoning, but it's also enmeshed in what I called economic cosmology, based on the holistic accountability of the self, the ethical self, in that it pertains to one's outlook towards the material and the non-material values. So I ask, what is economic thought in Islamic tradition, and how can modern societies theorize a new economic model through applied ethics based on the idea of justice? In light of these two questions, I propose to study economic teachings through a multifaceted conceptual framework that is centered on the ethical self. So So intellectual histories of Western economic thought were closely intertwined with evolutionary biology and physics, for instance. Methods found to be successful in natural sciences were applied in social sciences. Similar was with the notion of economic motion, as found in physics by Newton, for instance, that was introduced later on to economics. In other words, influence of evolutionary biology and economic thought was conceived after the theory of evolution by natural selection. And some of the features that have manifested in economic theory are the idea of rational economic man, Homo economicus, the invisible hand of the market, indicating a non-interventionist, laissez-faire economic philosophy. These features of the Western economic thought are reflected to some degree in canonical economic theory. And according to this logic, mainstream economics advocates for an autonomous, self-interest individual as a natural unit of analysis. And this element is obviously enshrined in canonical economic theory to the present day. Now, on the other hand, what I mean with the term economic cosmology, it has at least two different yet interrelated meanings. Firstly, cosmology indicates Sharia's ethical patterns in and of economic teachings and behavior, in that those patterns form human conduct in economic affairs, and they pertain to broader social, metaphysical, even environmental and ecological aspects. And they obviously include the matters of worship, if you will, ibadah, but also the matters of transactions or muamalat, commercial transactions. Secondly, the term economic cosmology refers to an inclusive form of culture, a framework in which a particular tradition or culture is analyzed through historical as well as contemporary dimensions. Now, in other words, the just principles of economic thought in Islamic tradition are very much related to ethical norm construction. Next slide, please. And they pertain to concepts such as adl, maslaha, hizba, zakat, riba, waqf, and so on and so forth. Some scholars believe that the early Muslim society developed a form of market economy and advocated for accumulation of capital, for instance, while others state that Muslim society never really developed institution of corporation because of the restricting nature of Islamic law or fiqh. There have been also attempts by Western scholars to omit altogether the contributions by Muslim scholars on economic thought, but this was widely disputed by several authors such as Muhammad Ghazanfar, Abdullah Islahi, and other scholars. These views are, in my perspective, partial in how they assess economic life, and they leave out the ethical, metaphysical, cosmological accounts of economic thought that was closely related not only to the Quranic epistemology, but also broadly to legal, philosophical, and Sufi treatises and texts. Unlike their contemporary counterparts, classical scholars did not separate between disciplines, at least not in the way that modern scholars do. Since economic thought was part and parcel of broader ethical and metaphysical questions, then one could state the economic teachings by, for instance, Al-Shaybani, Al-Muhasibi, Al-Isfahani, Al-Ghazali, and many others were all-encompassing and, in this sense, cosmological. This view is not only more justified from a historical perspective, but also does more justice to the central themes of economic thought in Islamic intellectual traditions. They lived in different eras, they came from various backgrounds, which testifies to the complexity and plurality of economic thought in Islamic tradition. Next slide, please. And now I just want to sort of give you a very brief rundown of three scholars, and there are many, many more. There are numerous scholars that really deal with what I would call the ethical economic genre in Islamic tradition. And the three scholars are, for instance, Al-Shaybani, Al-Mawardi, and Al-Ghazali. So very quickly, because of time constraints, Al-Shaybani was believed to be the first scholar who thought of kasb, or acquisition of wealth, earning a livelihood, if you will, and zuhd, renunciation of the world, in his Kitab al-Kasb, so the book of earning a living. And he said that kasb has to be in service of a public good. So kasb is related very much to the notion of maslaha, or common good. In this sense, ibadah relates to mu'amala, sales, accumulation of wealth, the value of money. They're treated within the context of piety, within the context of asceticism and renunciation. Kasb means, for Al-Shaybani, acquiring wealth by legal means and corresponds to one's faith. That is, earning presupposes cooperation between various industries. On the other hand, hoarding, for instance, would be regarded as illicit or unlawful. Next slide, please. Next on the list is Al-Mawardi and his Abad al-Din wa Dunya, where he also analyzes economic provisions and piety, which go hand in hand. This pertains to business, trade, and so forth, and he states that all of this is part of human activities. They extend from agriculture all the way to production. What Al-Mawardi sets forth to do is really to revive the human being, al-aslah al-insan, linked, which is also linked obviously to financial activities. Kasb for Mawardi is theorized as an activity that leads towards securing finances and human needs. Concomitantly, on the other hand, zuhd means introspection or muhasaba and focuses on poverty, faqr, rather than riches. Next slide, please. Finally, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, who is well known as the forerunner of economic thought in Islam, and he says that money is a tool of exploitative practices in the caliphate. So al-Ghazali is again a very, very intricate scholar, someone who really navigates various terrains from Islamic law to theology to falsafa to tasawwuf, as you know. In his time, there was proliferation of many classical works on economic thought, and he's also well known to critique officials in Baghdad in the 11th and early 20th century. Now, wealth has, for Al-Ghazali, both religious and material benefits, but also harms. Benefits because obviously you can provide for oneself, for one community, for one's family, but also harms because of something called hubbul mal, the love for wealth, right? There is insatiate appetite for wealth. Wealth, in other words, means to achieve higher ends, only to achieve higher ends, or only to be treated as a medium for exchange, but it's never an end in and of itself, right? Now, what does this leave us with? Next slide, please. The role of knowledge in society is one of power, I would argue. Muslim cultures borrowed from numerous other cultures throughout its history from a relative position of strength. With the onslaught of modernity, however, the Muslim world has assimilated much of the political, economic, and social capital, including the very construction of knowledge production about economics. For Walter Mignolo, there is no modernity without coloniality. And the radical shift first occurred in the economy that allowed Western empires to take over the resources associated with colonialism. The second epistemological transformation includes the production of knowledge and science associated with the scientific revolution. Mignolo warns, however, that hidden in these transformations is a particular disregard or dispensability of human life. And what is needed for Mignolo is the so-called epistemic delinking. A necessary operation, you have it here on the slide as well. Oh, excuse me, next slide. A necessary operation which opens up the space for vastly different, yet no less scientific theories on economics and environment from non-Western, and in our context, obviously, Islamic origins that challenge the prevailing discourses on knowledge production about these fields. The process then of decolonial thinking or decolonial epistemology brings to the surface non-Western principles of knowledge production and really entails a redefinition of the categories of economy, politics, ethics, nature, and so forth. So instead of building or only building on economic science, which is anchored in the Enlightenment reason or Enlightenment project, new categories of acquiring knowledge are needed in order to decolonize these concepts and worldviews. I would then encourage further research on other indigenous philosophical and ethical economic models and their contributions. The question, however, remains, how can teachings from Islamic intellectual history contribute to the modern debates on economics in light of the established academic divisions and programs? Because as we well know, the modern world harbors a prejudice with respect to what counts as scientific and therefore also valid reasoning in economic science that is based on observables. I have been fairly critical of the Islamization of knowledge of modern Islamic economics and finance, and I think it's largely rooted in pre-established understanding of economic science and ontology. But I think that revitalizing other pre-modern Muslim thinkers means critically engaging with, not only with the discipline of economics, but with the Islamic tradition itself. Finally, on the other hand, modern Islamic economics and finance has largely been disassociated from the classical conceptualizations of the ethical self. And I think it all boils down to one fundamental question. Is its purpose to improve the living conditions and establish social equity goals or not? If this is indeed the case, then I think it should reject the idea that welfare or happiness have a direct or positive relation to material accumulation, because material aspects of economics cannot be divorced from moral and ethical standards. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to your questions and discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's just on time. I was thinking that just giving you some signal, but you are very good, mashallah. Thank you very much for this great presentation and opening discussion. Now, again, we are going to go with the order. Unfortunately, I just tried to talk to our technical team here to move up a little bit, upscale this presentation, so you missed some details down there, but it's not technically possible now. Sorry about that. We are going to make sure that at least you will be access to all information through the screen, but next time I will urge you to move up this, because the bottom line cannot be seen. Çok teşekkür ederiz. Birinci konuşmalar bitti. Burada.
Now, the first presentation is over. We will proceed with the second presentation, and we will discuss Islamic economics and counter-capitalism. Professor Dr. Monzer Kahf is together with us.
He is waiting for this great comparative discussion comes from the historical background and everything. Inshallah, it will be very fruitful. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
No, I have one.
Oh, you have one? Great.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Of course, I will have to thank the organizer of this forum and thank the audience also, more important, for being here with us. Of course, my background and study is economics and Sharia both together. But so I am asked to discuss the issue of what does Islamic economics have to counter capitalism. So to think about this issue, I thought that probably we should start asking ourselves the question of where is the problem with capitalism? In a recent report by Oxfam, okay, please get me the next one slide. Yes. Okay, the next one. Oh gosh, come on, yani, we should have a remote and do it ourselves. Why? Okay, so in a recent report by Oxfam, it says that, as you notice, poverty has increased, anti the objectives of the United Nations and the strategies and the plans, and the gap between the top 10% and the lowest the top 1% and the lowest 10% have also increased. Does that mean that capitalism failed? That's a question that we really need to discuss. Next, please. So I asked myself the question, what is wrong with capitalism? Where is the problem? And yeah. And you follow up with me quickly, please, okay? So what is wrong really with capitalism? And I thought of these points. They may not be inclusive really, but I think these are the major points. Extended authority and scope of private ownership. Undefined economic role of the government. Hegemony of capital and finance, both activity and center. Lack of definite concept of mercy and care, al-ihsan. Attitude of grab what you can, regardless of real value creation. And sorry to say that I don't speak in any epistemology way or in any matter that is ethics. I need by value creation, creating a new thing that is valuable to people, that creates utility in people. So I mean it in the pure economic sense. Lack of family and community function in the economy. Next, please. So what does the Islamic economic system offer as alternative? We have well-defined and protected 4 categories of ownership: private, public, community, which is kind of semi-public, and waqf. We have active and well-defined economic role of government. Capital can only earn if it contributes to value creation, again, value in the economic sense, in the real market. Again, finance activities are limited to supporting real market, no separate financial properties and activities. In other words, in the Islamic economic system, we don't recognize financial activities when they separate from the real market. For instance, a big issue that is in which trillions, or rather hundreds of trillions of US dollars are being invested from the point of view of Islamic point of view, are just zero, are just nothing. Imagine it. All, for instance, what is called option, the estimation is about 1,200 trillion are invested, US dollars, are invested in options, and the Sharia concept of it, the Sharia opinion of it, these are completely nothing. Options are nothing. The ruling of the OIC Fiqh Academy reads, and I was part of making this ruling, in fact, it reads, options are not permissible to buy, to own, to sell, or to trade. So really they are simply nothing. So imagine that, because they are separated from the real value. They think they create value financial alone, but that is not acceptable for us in Islamic economics. We have also clear and definite concept of mercy, al-ihsan. Mercy and care is well defined in Sharia, and we'll come to that. We have also attitude of cooperation and care, that is family and community role in economics. Next, please. The Islamic economic and financial system is, I'll make it as a statement, but then we will discuss that, inshallah. Socially friendly, environmentally friendly, philanthropic, market correcting, developmental, economic gap reducing. We will see how these statements are justified. And I look at them, please next. I look at them from 6 points of view. These are the for-profit Islamic finance, the Islamic third sector, zakah, awqaf, and charity, the market failure and market correction in the Islamic economic system, the pre-market wealth diffusion, realistic development process, and the Islamic fiscal system. We'll look at these one very quickly, really, because, and with the permission of the moderator, that he may give me a couple of minutes more. Unlike what many of us may think, for-profit Islamic finance is the most important, impactful component of Islamic social finance. It's really more important probably than zakah and awqaf and whatnot. For-profit Islamic finance is founded on owning a property which generates real value and is morally committed. It is morally committed and it must generate added value. If it doesn't do that, then it's nothing, like the options, for instance. Capital may earn, but earns only by contributing to value creating. Next, please. In for-profit Islamic finance, financial intermediation is a double kind of intermediation. Financial intermediation does what merchants do, what traders do, buy commodities and sell it on credit. So this is the financial intermediation. It is a commercial intermediation between supplier and users. Though at low level, because we don't take the decision, we allow the customer to take the decision. Financial intermediation, again, is between savers and investors. So we have double role, not like conventional interest-based financial intermediation, which is purely financial only. Next, please. The implications of for-profit Islamic finance are, what's that? Okay. Implication of this, there are some slides in between. Give me the next slide. What is before this? Okay. Okay. It seems that I'm getting some missing, some jumping. But anyway, we'll come to this later anyway. Let's talk to the second point. We will come back to that. The second point, the Islamic third sector. Islamic third sector consists of zakah, awqaf, and charity. So we are not going to talk about it in detail anyway. Zakah is highly well known by many people, but it is really a permanent feature. And it is unlike what you find, for instance, sorry to say that, on the website of the Diyanat here, or by the many fatwa that you find on the internet. The rich is exempt from zakah. According to these fatwa, the rich, in fact, is the one who is more required to pay zakah, whether the richness is in the form of real estate or machineries or industry or all that. So the rich is the one who is required to pay more of the zakah, definitely, than the middle class who don't know how to invest and keep their money cash. Even many of the middle class now don't keep their money cash, either use it for consumption or they have some opportunities for investment. So the zakah proceeds, according to some rational estimation, goes between 3.5% and 7.5% of GDP, which is a high percentage really. And that, remembering that in many countries, tax rate to GDP goes in the neighborhood of 20%. It's not as much as the tax rates in many countries today, but it is very important in its size as a transfer, really, a technology of transfer income from the rich to the poor. So transferring 3.5% to 7.5%, varying from one country to another, is very important in redistribution of income. Awqaf is also a creation of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. At no previous precedent that he knew, he never heard about something that we discovered, that some people made awqaf for the Library of Alexandria 4 centuries before Islam. Yes, this may have happened, yes, but they were done anyway through the priests and the other people of religion. Awqaf, as decreed by the Prophet Muhammad, is a civil action, is an economic civil action, has nothing to do really with religion, religiosity, or religious leadership, or Diyanat officers, or with the turban that we put on our heads, or what not. So the sadaqat is very important. It is mentioned in the Quran, in fact, more than zakah, a lot more than zakah, and it is very important. It is the driver in the Muslim economy of microfinance, of lending institutions, and of general NGOs. With collective prayers and mosque, sadaqat create community economic nutshell. The third point is the correction of market failure. Market failure is known in economics that the distribution of income in the market alone does not create socially acceptable distribution of income. So we need to adjust the market in more than one way, and the adjustment of market that are given in the Islamic economic system are very important. So the tools that we have for adjusting, we have the moral and spiritual behavioral teaching. Allah ordains al-adl and al-ihsan. Notice in this verse there is adl, and adl can take the different forms, whether economic adl. Of course, a part of economic adl is not to pay more than the worth of that commodity when I buy it, or not to pay more than the worth of that service that I got from another person when I buy that service. That is economic adl. But social adl is that people need to be satisfied that we don't leave any empty stomach. We don't leave a sick person who needs support, who needs medicine. We don't leave one who is naked while others are clothed. That is a social adl that is required. And then the other pillar that comes as in the verse in the Quran, al-ihsan. So al-ihsan is well defined in our Sharia. Allah imposed ihsan on everything. And also, when one does a thing, you should do it the best. When you do a thing, you do it the best way it can be done. And that is al-itqan. Redistribution of income through zakah. We have the item of diffusion of wealth through inheritance. Moral and semi-legal supervision of the market, al-hisba, responsibility in the market, al-hisba system, as the Prophet ﷺ applied it, and a presence of awqaf and NGOs in the market, correct the market because they are in the market as producers and as providers also. The presence of the public sector in the market is also a correcting tool in the market. The fourth point is the pre-market wealth diffusion. This comes through the inheritance system. The Islamic inheritance system is based on the on the concept of ownership, and definitely the Islamic concept of ownership here again is a bit different from the full authority and extended authority of ownership in the capitalist system. The ownership is God-given to human. So it is from God, not from the state and not from the society. Two, private ownership ends at the end of life. You are given a property while you are alive. You have no authority on it after you die. In the capitalist system, you do anything with it after you die even. It's no more yours in Sharia. In our system, it's no more yours. Allah is the true owner, and Allah distributes it upon death the way He chooses. And this distribution that He made upon death is really based on His mercy, that He gave priority to our kins, not to outsiders. The estate is diffused among kin of the deceased, God-given, done by the true owner in the Quran. By the way, in Islamic inheritance system is practically almost all of it in the Quran. There are only two rare cases that come outside the Quran. And the Islamic inheritance system is strongly connected with the desired social and family structure. The fifth point that I wanted to discuss is the realistic development process. Development is done always in everywhere by spirited individuals. Development is not done really by groups. It's by the individual who has the zeal to become richer, who has the zeal to produce more, who has the zeal to also help others more. Private property and personal zeal are the drivers of development. Reconstruction of human personality to become, as came in Surah number 16, to become capable, communicatable, self-dependent, and industrialist. These four characteristics are the characteristics of the developmental person, compared with what Malik ibn Nabi called the after the fall, the drop of water after the fall that has no energy. The enabling, enhancing, supporting, and facilitating role of the government is important, and the example of the Prophet is very clear when a man came to him asking him for charity, and he guided him and helped him and supported him and even supervised him later to become productive and be a productive element in the economy rather than a user only. The next point is the Islamic fiscal system. The Islamic fiscal system really, its fundamental are one, respect of private property. Taxes are only the last resort, not really quick. We don't jump to taxes quickly. When taxes are needed, they are based on community solidarity, of course, and they are also based on circulation of wealth in the economy, not keeping wealth in few hands. Priority for the needs for taxation is for provision for the poor. Okay. principle of fard al-kifaya. Fard al-kifaya, my own translation is personalized collective responsibility. It is personalized, required by every person, but it is for a collective objective. So fard al-kifaya, and fard al-kifaya means that we take from those who are more able according to the taxable capability. Taxable capability means richness in both meaning of wealth and income, not in one of them alone. And we have the pattern of zakah, which is in fact on wealth and income together. The implication of all the above, that we are talking about a system that is socially friendly, environmentally friendly, philanthropic, market correcting, developmental, and economic gap reducing. All these are what is the Islamic economic system. Thank you very much. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin.
Cezakallahu hayır. Thank you very much. No, şimdi diğer
Now we are going to proceed with our last speaker. Before that, for a rapid preparation, we will host you for a while.
For this session, the last speaker of this session. Yeah, please. He's going to talk about financial sector, especially in terms of Islamic justice and Islamic law perspective. So, floor is yours. Thank you very much.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Well, first I thought I would have to speak in English, but the moderator told me that I could speak in Arabic as well. So since I'll be merely discussing Sharia issues, I think it's better to speak in Arabic because Sharia is better explained in Arabic. So أود أن أشكر الأخوة المنظمين لهذا المنتدى، وموضوع الحديث هو عن استقرار الأسواق المالية في ظل أحكام الشريعة الإسلامية. كيف أن الشريعة الإسلامية. If there's no translation, okay, then I'll have to speak in English again. Okay. So I will be discussing, of course, the issue of stability of Islamic financial markets. You know that from Sharia point of view, permissibility is the original norm, which means that anything is deemed to be permissible unless the otherwise is established. What the Sharia did is the Sharia came with certain rules that, let's say, certain items, certain components, or certain issues, if they exist in a contract, the contract becomes impermissible. Like, let's say, the Sharia has outlined for us that, let's say, riba, which is interest, is haram, and also gambling, which is gharar, is also haram. So if we structure any investment instruments that's void of the prohibitory elements, the transaction or the product is deemed to be permissible. Now, we know that, let's say, the Sharia has a strict stand towards riba, because the concept of riba in Islam is never limited only to lending on interest. The concept of riba encompasses other transactions like selling money for money, not on the spot or with difference in value. For example, I'm selling you 100 Turkish lira for 150. This is a kind of riba, selling, not lending. Or when I'm, let's say, exchanging Turkish lira for dollars, but not on the spot. So one of us will be paying, let's say, the one counter, and the other party will be paying the other counter value later on. Now, when it comes to financial markets, we know that we have different types of financial markets. We have the capital market, which is considered to be like long-term financing. That would include bonds, that would include stocks, shares. and sukuk are because they're meant to be alternative or substitutes to bonds. And we have also the money market, which is short-term debt instruments. They are interest-bearing instruments. We have also the commodity market, where commodities are sold, purchased, or traded. We have the foreign exchange markets. So the Sharia has already identified certain practices as unacceptable. For example, we cannot sell money for money, like what happens, let's say, in foreign exchange markets. The Sharia says when we sell money for money, the transaction has to be on the spot. So this will curb speculation, because speculation in currencies is quite dangerous. It harms the economies. And the Sharia very firmly prohibited the exchange of money for money if done on the future. So by this prohibition, the Sharia has curbed the means, so to speak, to speculation. You know that speculating on currencies is quite harmful to any economy. And we remember what happened back in 1997, that so-called tiger Asian countries, where speculation has caused the collapse of certain economies at the time in Southeast Asia. So this is one rule. When we sell money for money, it has to be on the spot. And this would mean that we cannot trade in money in the way money is traded in foreign exchange markets. This is one thing. Now, when it comes to capital market, for example, in capital market, we have bonds. Bonds from Sharia point of view are totally haram. Why? Because they provide their holders with guaranteed return as well as guaranteed principal. So this is unacceptable, which means that we have to exclude bonds as well from the capital market. When it comes to stocks, to shares, the Sharia has some restrictions, has some rules as how to invest in stocks and what can be invested in and what cannot be invested in. So there are some restrictions when it comes to stocks of companies. And also, let's say, you know that now even stocks were, in this regard, we've got all of the distinguish between the so-called first market, the primary market, and the secondary market. The primary market of stocks, of course, is good, is beneficial to the economy because it helps companies expand. But when it comes to the secondary market, we know for sure that the secondary market has many harms, has many economic harms, and this has been proven recently. So, and what contributes to this harm is this what we call high volatility of the stock market. Now, the Sharia also curbs the speculation that causes this high volatility. By what? By, for example, prohibiting short selling. We know that short selling is unacceptable from Sharia point of view. Why? Because the one who borrows shares will have to pay interest in order to get the shares and then sell them later on. And also Sharia prohibits margin trading if it's done through conventional, what we call borrowing. So by prohibiting short selling, by also prohibiting margin trading through conventional loans, the Sharia has reduced what we call the volatility of the stock market. So it ensures that and preserves the market and making sure that it's somehow stable or relatively stable and not volatile. Now, when it comes to commodity market, as I told you, the concept of riba in Islam is never limited only to borrowing or lending on interest. The Sharia says when we sell commodities, for commodities, there are some Sharia rules. For example, the Sharia says we cannot sell stable food, like let's say wheat, like barley, on credit, unless with certain conditions. And also the Sharia says don't engage in a sale contract where the two counter values are deferred to the future, which is in Arabic, there's hadith Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam an bay'i al-kali'i bil-kali'. So it's a sale contract whereby you defer the delivery of the two counter values. We know that from Sharia point of view, we can defer the price, but then we'll have to deliver the commodity of sale, like in the deferred payment sale, or we can pay the price now and take delivery of the commodity in the future, which is the case with salam contract. but the Sharia wouldn't allow us to defer both counter values. Why? Because this encourages speculation. This encourages speculation. So what's happening now in the commodity market? You see that commodities are sold on a future basis, as hinted to by Dr. Monzer. So people now, they speculate on certain commodities through the option contracts, through different types of derivatives like futures, like swaps. So they do this speculation, which is very akin to gambling. So when the people start excessively speculating on certain commodities, this would cause some financial or some economic harms. Why? Because this excessive speculation may either lead to increasing the price artificially, which would harm then the end users, the consumers of that commodity. Like let's say when this happens, let's say on staple food like wheat, like rice, or like oil nowadays. So this will harm the end users. And conversely, when speculation will cause the price to drop, this could harm the producers. So either way, over speculation, excessive speculation in the market is prohibited. So how would the Sharia treat this problem? The Sharia says when you engage in a sale contract, one of the two counter values has to be paid or delivered. You cannot just defer both. There could be some exceptions when it comes, for doing the same for hedging purposes. But hedging, yes, there could be some exceptions. So maybe we can engage in a sale contract without delivering any of the two counter values if this is meant for hedging. But for speculation, the Sharia would never permit it. Because the speculation will mean that the transaction is meant like for gambling. And if it's gambling, then it's haram. Gambling is haram because it's a zero-sum game. Because it leads to that unjustified enrichment of one party at the expense of the other. And this is exactly what happens in the so-called the financial markets nowadays. The concept of gambling is limited to casinos. The concept of gambling has developed recently to include also the financial markets. Most of the transactions that are executed and concluded on the financial markets are meant for speculation. And this explains the high volatility of prices of many commodities that we have, and also of the currencies. And this is quite harmful to any economy. And this, when in the context of currency, this will harm the economic functions of money. We know that money has been, let's say, money is meant to achieve certain purposes. Like, let's say, being a means of exchange, a unit of account, a standard, like, let's say, to evaluate what we call the other valuable things. But when people start speculating on currencies in a way that will cause high volatility, then these three economic functions of money will be significantly harmed and affected. So the Sharia, in short, the Sharia preserves the stability of the financial market after excluding certain practices. Certain practices have already been excluded. No way can we engage in them, like bonds, like lending or borrowing on interest. So after excluding this highly risky transactions or riba-bearing transactions, the Sharia would also place some restrictions on how to invest in the financial markets. Just to make it simpler and clear, you see, in Islam, any investment in Islam is permissible unless there is guarantee to return, which is the case of riba. In riba, the normal riba. In normal riba, there is guarantee to return. Because you lend others money, you take securities, you protect yourself. So your principal is guaranteed, your return is guaranteed. This is unacceptable to the Sharia because this is not a real economic activity. Now, what's the opposite to riba is the so-called gharar, which is gambling, because gharar is also of different levels. The top of which, or the highest of which, is the so-called gambling. Because gharar in itself, if gharar means uncertainty, then of course any sale contract, any transaction, any investment also involves some risk and uncertainty. No, I'm not talking about this kind of gharar. I'm talking about the highest or the top level of uncertainty, which is gambling. So gambling, you're trading risk. In gambling, you are trading risk. And it's a zero-sum game. Zero-sum game means what you win equals what other loses, what the other loses. So you're getting money from others without any valid reason, just like by luck. So the Sharia has prohibited these two extremes. The risk-free transactions, which is the case of riba, and the risk-loaded transaction, which is gambling. And the halal lies in between. Nowadays, the financial markets nowadays are risk-loaded. They are risk-loaded, and that's why even though they should be in principle halal, but in view of their practical applications, because the risk is no longer the normal risk, the risk has increased to an unacceptable level, bringing it closer to gambling. So we'll have to say that these transactions are unacceptable from Sharia point of view. And this would apply necessarily to, let's say, trading now in cryptocurrencies. Of course, the issue of whether cryptocurrency is a valid currency or not, this is a different story. The Sharia has its own conditions for in any currency to be recognized as a valid currency. Whether these conditions apply to cryptocurrency or to Bitcoin, for example, this is a different issue. But when it comes to trading in this cryptocurrency, it's very obvious that it's highly risky. And since it's highly risky, we're not supposed to invest in it because it's very close to gambling. Very close to gambling. We cannot say that, wallahi, this is my money, I can do whatever I like with my money. No, even though it's your money, but you don't have the right to, let's say, expose your money to unnecessary risk. Just like the Sharia prohibited gambling, the Sharia also prohibited exposing your money to unnecessary risk. Oh, 2 minutes. So these two extremes are totally unacceptable and prohibited from Sharia. The risk-free transaction, which is the case of riba, and also the highly risky transactions, because this is the case with gambling. Now, unfortunately, in Islamic financial markets nowadays, there have been some attempts to Islamize these controversial practices, like, let's say, margin trading, like, let's say, short selling, even futures on currencies, futures on commodities. So these attempts, unfortunately, to Islamize them doesn't fit within the spirit and essence of the Sharia Islamiyah. Sharia is never driven by technicalities. So you just change the way you reach your end and becomes halal. No, the essence of the transaction, if it's highly risky, if it's risk-loaded, then it's haram. Just like if the transaction is risk-free, principal is guaranteed, return is guaranteed, then it's haram, even if it doesn't look as such. Sometimes the transaction is like, let's say, manipulated in a way or structured in a way that make it different from riba, from interest-bearing loan. But you look deep into the essence of the transaction, you find it no different from a riba, because it provides the financier with guaranteed return and also guaranteed principal, which is unacceptable and which is the essence of the riba. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair again. Thank you so much. It was very delightful and also very insightful, presentation so far. We have started a little late, so I would like to use my discretion to give you additional minutes for the QA section as well. But beforehand, if you allow me, I would like to summarize some critical points you presented for Turkish audience in Turkish, if you don't mind. Arkadaşlar, kıymetli misafirler, katılımcılar, bu özellikle bu bölüm ikinci günün en
I think this part was very sensitive because we talked about the essence of just and fair economy and finance and in the roots of Islam and our daily lives, whether they intertwine with each other or they cover each other. So we have mentioned 3 different perspectives with our speakers, and I will share some critical points with you, and after that we will have Q&A part. I would like to explain some certain places. Sami al-Daghistani, Dr. Daghistani, the most important with the religious approaches in the financial issues and economic procedures, we cannot have our relation with we are disconnected from our past. Epistemologically, our roots are very strong, especially during Sahaba period. We were doing them very well, but for epistemologically, we are disconnected from our past, and somehow we approve and we embrace the existence, but we see this connection. Again, in order to ensure this, for conventional economic models and concepts and instruments, in an epistemological manner, it is not possible for us to reach any place. It is not possible for us to achieve. So we can start with the richness of our past. Mr. Monzer Kahf also talked about capitalism, and rather than talking about successful or unsuccessful system, we need to look at the Islamic economy and fair Islamic economy, and we will not look at the success or failure of the other part. We will deal with ourselves, because we see the injustice, because the richness is shared by a certain percentage of the people in the world. So in 5 different pillars, he talked about the essence of Islamic economic philosophy. I will just share the pillars. In the social order, it should be humanistic. It should be human-centered for Islamic economy. And again, the environment, the creators should be taken into consideration. And again, it should be sharing, like the culture of Waqf. It's not about consuming the producing. It's about sharing what you produce. So the market should have the right position. And for the supply and demand, it is important that we have the monopoly. If the demand is dispersed, then it can be changed. So that is why the market should have the demand, and the inflation should be prevented. In order to develop economically, there should be different verification and differentiation of income. Again, lastly, Mr. Abdulazeem Abozaid said that it is not approved to sell money, to gain money. These financial systems, in the system, according to Sharia, if we talk about such a circle, so what should we pay attention from the Islamic point of view? First of all, in the stock exchanges, the first and the primary and the secondary stock exchange markets, in the distinction of the primary market and secondary market, the risk of profitability, if we see that it is not guaranteed, the primary market stocks should be prioritized, and it is not forbidden to be active in the primary stock exchanges, but in secondary exchanges we see the fluctuations and we see the volatilities, and this is like gambling. similar to gambling, because you don't know. You think that you buy from the minimum value and then you will sell it to the maximum value. So this is volatility, and you see the high volatility in such transaction, and the risk is increasing in the Islamic system. So that is why it is very similar to gambling. So so if you don't have the guarantee, then this means that interest. So it is guarantee. So there is a problematic structure. So if you don't have the guarantee, not any guarantee at all, so it is like the gambling. So it is only about luck. So a certain kind of risk, visible risk, and through that financial system, we should be in between. So this is the sum up of the presentation. Of course, there are details, and in Q&A part, you can ask them.
QA section, if there is any questions to raise for you, but I would like to give Dr. Monzer for a couple minutes. He said that for technically we missed a couple slides, so he would like to cover that. Sir.
Thank you very much. I think this is important. Sorry for missing these slides because it was only, they were marked as hidden. So I'll... So we need slides 12. Just 1 moment. When we talk about Islamic for-profit Islamic finance, what is the implication when we apply the rules of Islamic finance that you cannot earn without contributing to the creation of additional value? That means really very important implications. One, sticking always to the real market. That means there will be no finance if there is no movement of real goods and services in the real market. It also means that the economic signal comes from the real market to the finance market. This is the opposite that what happens in capitalism. The economic signal goes from the finance to the real market. Here, the economic signal comes from the real activity, the real market, to the finance market. The size of finance will be limited by the size of real transactions. Now, we should notice today, the size of finance transactions is not only 10 times, but a multiplicity of times the real market transaction. And the theory of Maurice Allais, for which he got Nobel Prize, the upside down theory in economics, upside down pyramid theory, that the capitalist system, it lies on a narrow and small layer of real market with different layers of financial transactions. Each one is bigger than the other. That's what makes the system unstable. Again, we integrate finance activities with wealth creation activities. We don't separate them. And the next slide, please. It is necessarily developmental, because when we say that we finance through sale, through lease, and through sharing, that is all developmental. Even when we finance consumers, because consumption is required definitely for development. So, because it gives the signal to produce more. So it is Islamic finance is necessarily developmental, while at least 10 out of each 11 transactions in the financial sector in United States, for instance, are not related to financing the real market. They are outside. They are pure financial transactions. So it finances only exchange and production. It withholds resources from harmful items, This is because of the moral system of Islamic finance. It withholds resources from activities which do not generate additional value. Again, like activities, say, of even Bitcoin or of trading currency on the internet. It's not acceptable, as Dr. Abdulazeem mentioned. It rediverts resources. All these resources, human and financial resources, that are used in almost all derivatives. What will be doing if there are no derivatives of these kinds that exist? And whatever derivatives that can be done within the Islamic system is very shallow and very small, and really exceptional cases. So what are these? All these resources will do definitely will go to the real production, and this is why poverty increased instead of being reduced, because financial and human resources are driven toward finance without production. Next slide, please. It eliminates non-productive activities. Dr. Abdulazeem mentioned many of these activities. I'm not going to repeat it, but when we exclude all items that hurt a human being, it means we are saving also on all the corrective necessary expenses for repair, for medical, for etc., that are caused by these harmful items. It establishes fairness. Is it not fair that if you own a thing, you earn the product of that thing? And if you don't own a thing that is productive, definitely, how would you claim earning? In the financial system of capitalism, you can earn without producing. Next slide, please. It doesn't pull resources from the real market, rather it sends resources back. Islamic banks can, or Islamic financial intermediaries can lean on partners instead of go bankrupt like what happened to Universal Bank. They can give their depositors lower profit, because profit is not, or the return on deposit is not predetermined as interest in advance. It is given as the reality at the end of a period, as it happens. It implants a standard of hard working. Now imagine the current financial system, that you sit behind a computer and click numbers and lose and gain and lose and gain. This is, yes, on one side, it's a form of gambling, but on the other side, which to me is probably more important and more attractive, that it teaches us that we can earn without hard working. Earning really requires production. So if you want to earn, you have to produce. You have to put your property to production. So changing the behavioral, the behavior of individual. It introduces market discipline. The financial intermediary institution that succeed deserves more deposit, deserves more support. And one that fails, let them fail. It goes bankrupt. It is finally environmental and societal friendly. Thank you very much.
Thank you again. It was great to have this edition, because it's fully get the whole picture. Now we can move on to Q&A section, but again, we used all the margin of additional timing. We do not put the danger for the following session. I would like to keep 5 questions max. So is there any questions for our great presenters from audience? Herhangi bir sorusu olan varsa 5 dakikada en fazla.
So we can get 5 questions for our panelists so that we do not cause any further delay in the next session. We have someone in the back.
I guess the question will be in Turkish, because if you will be speaking in Turkish, we will need headsets over here.
Selamünaleyküm. Thanks for who makes this organization and all the speakers. Thank you very much for your information and for very important your opinions. My question is to all the speakers who can give answer, doesn't matter. Now this in the world, this Zionist system, Zionist organization makes control to all the business sectors. They have a lot of materials like US dollar or like any documentation, and they make rule and they play it. As I mentioned, as my opinion, we have to leave this their slave system. Like we are using dollar, we are using SWIFT, EFT, some code. We have to live and we have to be our own business system. We have to make it. What must do it for get the result? So get action, please. Thank you very much.
Teşekkür ederiz. Eyvallah. Who would like to willing to answer the question? It's about current systems criticism. So we can start. Question itself is that onlar tekrar bir şey istediler. They are asking your opinion about the current economic systems, kind of parity or kind of harming side of this Israel-based or whatever. Please. Islamic economic matters.
Well, I mean, take for instance two economies, the Turkish economy and the Syrian economy now after the deposition of that dictator. The Turkish economy, of course, there is a graduation everywhere you work, and the Prophet ﷺ did a lot of graduation. So we need improvement step by step. There were some steps that were very good steps done toward improvement. But for instance, challenges of the Turkish economy essentially are corruption, which has increased over the last 5 years. It should be really more action should be done for reducing corruption. And two, you need to increase the domestic ingredients in our industry and in our agriculture. There is a high level of ingredient which affects our both inflation and the price of the currency in the Turkish economy. We need to reduce the foreign ingredients in the domestic industry and agriculture. And there are other elements can be talked about. Definitely controlling inflation is not an easy thing, but in my opinion it was, and I say it very loudly please, it was a very wrong decision that they have increased the interest rate, because that killed the local industry and killed the local transactions. Nobody can get financing at 55%. So that was very effective in killing industries at the same time. Instead, we should have used a dual rate. A rate for industry and agriculture and a rate for speculation. That will be okay had we used dual rate instead of one rate for everybody, and we killed industry while we were trying to reduce inflation. Yes, inflation reduced a lot, a little, not a lot, but the effect on domestic industry and production was very detrimental. That was a big mistake. We should have used dual. John Kennedy did that in America in the 60s. Dual rate of interest. I would say definitely if we were all fully Islamic, I would say rate of profit in Murabaha. But take the Syrian economy, for instance. Syrian economy now, definitely we need to start from zero because everything is destroyed. Everything, infrastructure are destroyed, everything. What is important in the Syrian economy is to depend on investment from our own, not investment from the rich oil countries or from America or the IMF and the World Bank. We need to depend, and that is not difficult at all, if we depend on our people, Syrians especially, but generally Arab and Muslims generally who are in Western countries. I am definite that there is at least 10,000 physicians who are willing, each one of them, to put 1 year free for Syria now. As a liberated Syria, yes, we need to depend on our own and rebuild, starting with infrastructure and of course with the immediate need of people. And go on building it. It will take time, but it will be built on appropriate way, not on exploitative way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bu $1 milyon soru olduğu için öyle kolay.
So this is the $1 million question, so it's not an easy answer. Changing the Swiss system is not just about the capital.
Root of economic systems, Islamic economic systems, and you talk about the stocks, tax, and everything. Maybe you may have a couple words for this.
Thank you. Yes, thank you also for your question again, and to my panelists for their presentation. So while I do acknowledge the importance of, and I'm not a specialist on Islamic finance, on economics and finance in today's world, I'm also wary to what exactly is its benefits or contributions to overall economy. And I look through the intellectual history and ethical frameworks, right? So while I do affirm that we're coupling, at least to some extent, we're coupling modern economic science with particular Islamic tenets, philosophical, ethical, theological, legal, jurisprudential, and so forth. I'm also thinking that on the flip side of things, to one extent, have we really challenged the prevalent capitalist system, right? So graduation is extremely important, I think, but we're not there yet. Are we really talking about a functional Islamic economic system that exists anywhere in the world, so to speak, right? I would be wary of that. So graduation is extremely important, but on the other hand, instead of challenging the global market economy, I see that, on the flip side, maybe Islamic economics has been integrated into the financial conglomerates, right? So I think more has to be done. Maybe we're still, on one hand, at the very beginning of this process, and we should not shy away from the pre-modern, classical conceptualizations or understanding, theoretical frameworks, right? I think that there is still much to be learned from the Sufis, the theologians, the philosophers, the ethicists, and so on and so forth. So I think that in this case, intellectual history can be extremely beneficial for us to theorize a new model that is based on ethical principles, right? So I would say we're maybe halfway through. In some cases, we've been extremely critical, but in the other cases, we have not challenged the global prevalent economic system per se, right? So I see a much work that is yet to be done. And this has to be cross-departmental, interdisciplinary. It has to be from various branches, various industries moving forward, right?
I would say that we shouldn't blindly follow the trends of the commodity and financial markets. We need to subject new instruments introduced by the financial markets to close scrutiny, Sharia scrutiny, because we believe as Muslims that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would prohibit only things that are harmful to us and will permit to us only things that are good. And this is derived from a very explicit verse from the Quran. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahim, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْخَمْرِ وَالْمَيْسِرِ قُلْ فِيهِمَا إِثْمٌ كَبِيرٌ وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ وَإِثْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا. So the ayah means, they ask you, the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet, would ask you, Prophet, about wine, about maisir, which is kind of gambling. Tell them that there could be some benefits. But there are some harms, and the harms outweigh the benefits. So this in itself is can be adopted by us, by scholars, as a criterion to decide whether a particular transaction is acceptable or unacceptable. No doubt that the riba itself riba itself, the interest, the faiz itself, has some benefits, especially on the individual level. No one can deny it. But there are harms on the macro level, and these are significant harms. So that's why the Sharia by means of this ayah, very simple ayah, it tells us that we have, before deciding whether something can be practiced or cannot be practiced, we have to look into the benefits and the harms. If you find that this transaction or this thing has more harms than benefits, then we have to avoid it altogether. So, and this applies to the instruments that, that financial markets keep introducing to us. And they're mostly meant for, to encourage people, let's say, to speculate and take what we call unnecessary risk. And this will cause to enrichment of some people at the expense of the others. And we Muslims, especially in our part of the world, we are the end users, right? So the West is trying to, taking advantage of us through introducing these instruments, and we don't even when it comes to the way we practice them, we don't have the technical knowledge which is normally required even to enter into these fields of investment. For example, in the Gulf, where I currently based, in Qatar or in Saudi Arabia or in Emirates, you see the stock market there follows the trends of the foreign companies that come to invest in the Gulf. Because those people, especially on corporate level, they come to the Gulf and they invest in the local stock market. And those people are equipped with the necessary knowledge. They're equipped with the so-called technical knowledge and analytical knowledge that would help him decide what stock to buy and when to buy it and when to sell it. And the local people will just follow them because they don't have this kind of knowledge. So this would mean that they will seize the fortune, because the one who, of course, sells first is the one who makes the lion's share, right? So they take the money and they just move it to their countries. And so we have to be, we cannot just blindly follow any trend that comes from the modern financial markets. We have to scrutinize them and to make sure that they have really benefits, and their benefits outweighs the harms, if any. Thank you.
Cezakallah. Çok kapsayıcı makro mikro perspektifte.
Well, it is a very comprehensive question in micro and micro scale.
QA section, because we are almost close to the next one. So thank you very much. Alkışlayalım isterseniz. Güzel bir prezentasyon oldu. Ellerinize sağlık. But there's a memory of the day. They are going to present us a memory of the day for you guys. If you still stand here for a couple minutes.
Kıymetli misafirlerimize çok teşekkür ediyoruz.
Thank you very much. We are going to present the gifts, and I would like to invite the Deputy Chairman, Mr. Salih Keskin, who is responsible from research and development, to present the gifts, and we would like to thank you for your patience.